Hi, welcome or welcome back. You read the title. I'm Hannah. I've been on YouTube for a while, but about 6 months ago, the algorithm introduced me to AuthorTube, and I've just been so inspired by other people my age writing their first books and talking about it, and I eventually just got so much FOMO that I had to join, even though I kind of hate talking about my writing. I've mentioned my book vaguely on Instagram, and I talk about writing a lot on Threads, but I made it my New Year's resolution to join AuthorTube. So I'm filming this on December 29th, and I'm promising myself that I'm going to post it by or on January 1st. I'm just gonna do it. I've loved reading and writing since I was very, very young, and I always had this distant dream of being an author, but it always just felt like a given. Like, yes, of course, one day I will be an author. Like, it's just always something that I knew that I was going to pursue. But I also had a dream of being a filmmaker, so I went to film school. I'm still in film school. I'm a junior getting my BFA in creative producing, but before that, I was a junior in high school doing school on Zoom during the pandemic. One day I just opened Google Docs and started writing again. In 2020, I had more time on my hands to read. Reading always inspires me to write, and I just forgotten I hadn't read a book really for fun or written anything in years and years, and I was just bored, honestly. I had no intention of writing anything significant. I would just sit in Zoom school with Zoom open on one tab and Google Docs open on another, and I would just be like tapping away on my story. Once school was back in person, I sort of fell away from reading and writing again. I worked on the story off and on over the next several months until at some point in college I decided that I actually wanted to write a book. I was sort of hit with this realization that if I actually want to achieve that dream of being an author, I actually have to sit down and write an entire book from start to finish, and that takes a lot of time and effort, so I figured it was best to start now. And I'd heard on the internet that the first book that authors write isn't usually the first one that they publish because it's not good enough. I've heard that a lot of authors only write a book that's good enough to be published, to be their debut, only after they've written a few horrible books that will never see the light of day. So I was under no delusions that I was ever going to publish this. It was just for practice, and I figured, like, as a filmmaker, as someone who's studying storytelling, it's good to be practicing writing in any form. I knew that this would bring me closer to achieving that dream of really writing a book. And I was happy to do it. I was falling in love with writing again. I was at film school where loving writing and wanting to be a creative professionally was normal and encouraged. So to paint the picture, it's fall of 2023. I'm starting my sophomore year of college. I had written every single day over the summer, but I'd also just read Save the Cat and taken a screenwriting class or two. I started to deep dive into podcasts, YouTube videos, reading books about writing, and just learning about storytelling, structure, and craft, and all those things. So almost everything that I'd written up to that point in that project that I started in high school was scrapped because I realized that it was bad. So I took my characters and my newly outlined plot, which for the first time I was forcing myself to actually write an outline, because that's the thing, I always pantsed it. I never finished anything ever, and I'd made my decision that I was going to write an entire book start to finish, right? So I was like, Hannah, you have to outline the ending. Like, you have to know what you're writing towards. So I forced myself to outline a little bit, very roughly, but I knew what the ending was going to be, and I knew how to write to that. So I took my characters, my outline, and I was like, I'm just gonna start, I'm gonna write an entire book. And I started over in the fall of 2023, essentially, because it didn't seem like I was starting over at the time, but when I look back on it later, I realized that almost nothing that I wrote before that is in the current manuscript, so that's why I say I started over. So I finished the first draft in July of 2024, and for the last 6 months I've been revising, and I basically just finished my second draft. So about the book itself, it's a young adult portal fantasy, so magic and dragons and adventures and all that fun stuff. A lot of authors put cute little names like Project XYZ onto their books, but I unfortunately have not settled on anything like that. I cannot for the life of me come up with a title, even a fake one, so right now it's just my untitled, almost probably is 100,000 words manuscript that I've been toiling away at for what feels like forever. And since I've restarted this book so many times, it doesn't really feel like my first book. I mean, it's still my first book, but by the time I finish 4+ drafts of this, it's gonna be a world away from the thing that I started out of boredom in high school. And I've seen all these aspiring authors on YouTube and on Instagram talking about their first book as their debut. I've started to wonder, like, maybe the whole thing about your first book not being publishable doesn't always have to apply, but I also have little to no idea whether this is even remotely publishable. So my plan is to query, I think. This is why I'm starting this channel, because now I can hold myself accountable, because now I'm putting this out on the internet. My plan is to query sometime in 2025. Let's say that, just vaguely, generally, right now. I know I could self-publish, but I don't want to, and so I'm gonna query and just see what happens. I have no expectations, so I don't think I'll be very disappointed if nothing comes out of it, because I never intended to publish this in the first place. Within the next week or so, I'm gonna take a break from revising and start drafting a new project, a new book, before I dive into draft 3 of my current book. I started the second book in early 2023 and got to about 15,000 words, and it's the same world, same time period, but different characters, different stories, so it's kind of like a sequel, but it's not. My schedule for writing is so dependent on my school schedule. My spring semester doesn't start for another 5 weeks, so I really want to take advantage of this time to crank out as much content as possible, drafting this second book, posting on social media as much as possible, including this YouTube channel, and diving into revisions for draft 3. I'm going to be officially producing my first short film next semester, so I don't know how busy I'm going to be with that, so that might affect the speed of my progress on drafts 3 and 4. So that's me as a writer and a little bit about my book, but me personally outside of that, since this is an introduction video. Again, I'm Hannah. I'm from the Chicago area originally, but I go to school in Southern California. I'm out in beautiful Palm Springs with my family to celebrate the holidays right now. I'm also currently Miss Illinois, and I post a lot of pageant and travel videos on this YouTube channel. I studied abroad in the south of France last spring, so you're gonna see some vlogs from that popping up on here too. I wasn't sure if I should niche down and create a channel just to be my AuthorTube channel, but I've really enjoyed seeing this channel evolve over the years, so if this becomes primarily an AuthorTube channel, I won't be mad about it, but if there's other content here too, it is what it is. I really would like to keep all my content in one place. Anyway, I'm happy to be officially, finally, joining AuthorTube after lurking for like 6 months, and I'm so excited to have this means of holding myself accountable and tracking my progress with both of my book projects and any future books that maybe I'd hopefully that I will publish one day, and doing writing vlogs and things like that. All the content that I've loved to watch on AuthorTube over the last few months, like I'm excited to just make it because I love creating content. I'm obviously going to film school, so it's just so beautiful to look back on things like that, and feel free to follow along. Thanks for watching.